There is a person I want you to think about. Good heart, good intentions, always available, always understanding. They say yes even when they want to say no. They smile even when they feel disrespected. People call them kind, but deep inside they feel tired, invisible, and quietly angry. Here is the truth: nobody told them. They are not suffering because they are kind. They are suffering because they are afraid to stop being nice. And in 2026, that must end. The first key point is this simple truth most people avoid facing. Nice is not the same as good. Nice is often a performance. It is learned early, practiced often, and rewarded just enough to become a habit. Nice smiles when it is confused. Nice agrees when it is unsure. Nice nods even when something inside feels wrong. Good, on the other hand, is quieter and stronger. Good does not rush to be accepted. Good waits, listens, and then responds with integrity. Nice wants to be liked right now. Good wants to be right with itself for a long time. And many people confuse the comfort of being liked with the peace of being aligned. Nice behavior usually grows from fear, not wisdom. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as difficult or ungrateful. So you soften your words. You hide your discomfort. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. But the body remembers what the mouth refuses to say. That tightness in your chest, that tiredness you can't explain, that quiet resentment that shows up when you're alone, that is the cost of being nice when you should have been honest. Goodness does not erase fear. It walks through it. It speaks even when the voice shakes. It chooses truth even when approval becomes uncertain. Being good requires clarity, and clarity is uncomfortable at first. When you are good, you may disappoint people. When you are nice, you only disappoint yourself, slowly and repeatedly. Nice keeps the room calm but leaves the soul restless. Good may disturb the room, but it lets you sleep at night. Think of it like wearing shoes that are too small. At first, you adjust. You tell yourself you'll get used to it. But over time, every step hurts. Being nice when you are not being true is exactly like that. From the outside, you look fine. Inside, every step costs you something. Many people believe that goodness must always look gentle, soft, and agreeable. That belief traps them. True goodness has edges. It knows when to say no without anger. It knows when to stay silent without shrinking. It knows when to walk away without bitterness. Nice avoids edges because edges risk judgment. Good understands that without edges, nothing has shape. A life without boundaries becomes shapeless. You start adjusting to everyone else's expectations until you no longer recognize your own. Goodness restores shape. It gives form to your values, your time, and your self-respect. When you are nice, your worth feels borrowed. It depends on how others respond. A smile returned feels like success. A frown feels like failure. Your emotional state becomes a weather report based on someone else's mood. Goodness brings your worth back home. It stops outsourcing your value. You begin to act from what you believe, not from what you fear losing. That shift is subtle but powerful. You speak slower, you choose more carefully. You don't rush to fix what isn't yours to fix. You allow silence to do some of the work. Goodness also changes how you see other people. When you stop being nice for approval, you stop expecting others to behave a certain way to validate you. You listen without trying to please. You help without needing recognition. You disagree without making it personal. This is not coldness, it is maturity. Nice says, please don't leave me. Good says, I will not leave myself. From that place, relationships become cleaner. Fewer unspoken expectations, less emotional debt, more honesty in small moments that prevent big damage later. Over time, goodness builds a quiet confidence that doesn't announce itself. You don't need to explain your choices as much. You don't need to over-apologize. You don't replay conversations at night wondering if you said the wrong thing. That mental noise fades because you are no longer splitting yourself into who you are and who you pretend to be. Nice fractures the self. Good integrates it. You begin to feel solid, not hard, but grounded. Like standing with both feet on the floor instead of constantly leaning towards someone else for balance. The second key point is this quiet but costly truth. Every yes you give takes something from you, whether you notice it or not. A yes is never free. It always spends time, attention, energy, or emotional space. The problem is not that you say yes. The problem is that you say it without checking the price. You hand it out casually like loose change, and then wonder why you feel empty. At the end of the day, you wake up tired not because you worked too hard, but because you agreed to too many things that did not belong to you. Each yes feels small in the moment, but together they shape the weight you carry. Most people don't feel the cost immediately. It shows up later in quiet ways. In the way your patience runs thin over small things. In the way your enthusiasm fades for things you once cared about. In the way rest no longer feels restful. That's because your energy has been promised in too many directions. Imagine pouring water into 10 different cups at the same time. None of them ever fill. You keep pouring, but a thirst remains. Saying yes without intention spreads you thin, and then life blames you for being weak. When the truth is, you've been generous without limits. You were never meant to be available to everything and everyone. Your time is not an open field, it's a private garden. What you allow in determines what can grow. When you say yes to things that drain you, you crowd out the space meant for what strengthens you. And here's the part that hurts. People rarely notice what you give up. They only see what you provide. They don't see the quiet sacrifices. They don't see the plans you canceled with yourself. They don't see the exhaustion behind your reliability. So you keep giving, hoping someone will eventually say, "You've done enough." But that moment rarely comes. Saying no feels uncomfortable because it interrupts a pattern. People get used to your availability. They build expectations around your flexibility. When you finally pause and hesitate, it feels like you're breaking a promise, even if you never made one out loud. But a habit is not a contract. Just because you've always said yes doesn't mean you owe it forever. Growth often begins with disappointing the version of people that only benefited from your silence. That discomfort you feel when you say no is not guilt. It's your nervous system learning a new boundary. There is a difference between being helpful and being endlessly accessible. Help comes from choice. Access comes from assumption. When people assume you will always say yes, they stop asking with care. Your time becomes a resource they manage without consulting you. And slowly you start to feel like a tool instead of a person. This is why your yes must become intentional. Not hard, not angry, just thoughtful. A pause before responding is not rejection, it's respect for your own limits. Where you honor your capacity, you teach others how to treat it. Every strong yes is supported by many quiet no's. No to overcommitment. No to emotional labor that goes unrecognized. No to conversations that drain rather than connect. These no's are not acts of selfishness, they are acts of maintenance. Just like you wouldn't drive a car without refueling, you cannot keep showing up without replenishing yourself. The problem is, unlike a car, you don't get a warning light. You just feel dull, distant, and tired of things you used to enjoy. That's when you know you've been overspending yourself. When your yes becomes rare, it becomes meaningful. People feel it. They trust it. They value it more because it costs you something and you choose it anyway. You stop resenting your commitments because they align with who you are and what you want. Your energy returns because it's no longer scattered. You begin to feel present again, not stretched. This is not about doing less for others, it's about doing more with intention. When you choose your yes carefully, it stops draining you and starts defining you. The third key point is this deeply misunderstood truth. People don't respect sacrifice, they respect clarity. Sacrifice that is silent often goes unnoticed. Not because people are cruel, but because humans respond to what is visible and defined. When you keep giving without explaining your limits, others assume you are comfortable. They read your silence as consent. They mistake your power for endless capacity. And slowly, what you hoped would earn appreciation turns into an expectation that drains you without acknowledgement. Clarity feels risky because it removes the safety of being misunderstood. When you speak clearly, you reveal what matters to you, and that makes you feel exposed. It's easier to stay vague, to keep adjusting, to tell yourself that people will eventually get it. But they won't. Not because they don't care, but because minds are not built to read unspoken rules. A life lived without clarity becomes a guessing game for everyone involved, and you end up carrying the burden of disappointment alone while others walk freely, unaware they ever crossed a line. Think about clarity as a clean window. It doesn't control what people do outside, but it allows you to see clearly what is happening. Without it, everything feels foggy. You sense tension, but you can't name it. You feel taken for granted, but you can't point to the moment it began. When you speak your limits calmly, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you should have said something. Clarity gives your mind rest because it replaces inner debate with outer truth. Many people fear that clarity will make them seem harsh or unkind. In reality, the opposite is true. Unclear expectations create resentment. Clear expectations create trust. When people know where you stand, they don't have to guess how far they can go. Even if they don't agree with your limits, they understand them. Respect is born from predictability, not from sacrifice. When your actions and words match, people feel grounded around you. They may not always like your boundaries, but they feel safer knowing where you end. There is a quiet confidence that comes from being clear. It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten, it simply exists. You saint op over-explaining because you are no longer asking for permission. You stop justifying your needs because you recognize them as valid. This confidence isn't loud, but it changes the energy in the room. People listen differently. Conversations slow down. Decisions become easier. You are no longer managing emotions, you are managing reality. And reality responds better to clarity than to sacrifice. Clarity also teaches you who truly belongs in your life. Some people will adjust when you express your limits. They will meet you with respect and understanding. Others will push back, test you, or guilt you. This is not a failure, it is information. When someone resents your clarity, it often means they were benefiting from your lack of it. You don't need to argue or defend yourself. Their reaction tells you everything you need to know. Clarity filters without force. Over time, clarity becomes a form of self-respect you carry into every space. You walk into rooms without shrinking or hardening. You don't need to dominate to be heard. You don't need to disappear to keep peace. You simply show up as you are, with your lines drawn in quiet confidence, and something shifts. Life starts responding to you differently. Not because you give more, but because you finally made yourself clear. The fourth key point is this hard truth many avoid. Being too nice slowly takes your voice away. Not all at once, not loudly, but piece by piece. You don't lose it in one big moment. You lose it in small silences. In meetings where you had a thought but held it back. In conversations where something felt off, yet you smiled and moved on. In moments where your truth knocked quietly and you chose comfort instead. Over time, your voice doesn't disappear because others silence you. It disappears because you stop inviting it out. At first, silence feels like maturity. You tell yourself you're being calm, patient, understanding. You convince yourself that speaking up isn't worth attention. And sometimes that's true. But when silence becomes your default, It stops being wisdom and starts becoming fear. Your thoughts begin to pile up inside you like unopened letters. Each one carries something important. But you keep telling yourself you'll deal with it later. The problem is, later never comes. The weight just grows, and your inner world becomes crowded with things you never said. When you don't use your voice, others fill the space for you. They decide what you think, what you feel, what you can handle. Not because they are controlling, but because silence creates permission. People follow what is expressed, not what is hidden. If you never speak your limits, your ideas, your discomfort, the world assumes you have none. And slowly you start believing that assumption yourself. You begin to doubt whether your thoughts are worth sharing at all. That doubt doesn't stay in conversations. It leaks into how you see yourself. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from holding your tongue too often. It's not physical, it's emotional. It feels like being present but not fully alive. You laugh, but it doesn't reach deep. You agree, but something inside resists. You nod along, yet feel strangely distant from your own life. That exhaustion is the cost of self-editing all the time. Your mind works overtime deciding what version of you is acceptable, instead of resting in what is true. Your voice is not just sound, it is how you place yourself in the world. It carries your values, your boundaries, your identity. When you silence it, you don't just avoid conflict, you avoid connection. Real connection requires honesty, and honesty requires sound. People can't meet you where you are if you never tell them where you stand. So relationships stay shallow, not because you don't care, but because you're afraid to take up space. Silence keeps you safe, but it also keeps you unseen. Using your voice doesn't mean becoming loud or aggressive, it means becoming present. It means saying simple things clearly. I'm not comfortable with that. I need time to think. That doesn't work for me. These are not confrontations, they are coordinates. They tell the world where you are located. And once you start speaking this way, something shifts inside you. Your shoulders relax, your thoughts feel lighter. The constant inner rehearsal quiets down because you're no longer hiding your truth behind politeness. The more you speak honestly, the stronger your voice becomes, not just outwardly, but inwardly. You begin to trust yourself. You stop second-guessing every word after it leaves your mouth. You feel grounded instead of reactive. Even when your voice shakes, it feels right. Even when others disagree, you remain steady. This is how confidence is built, not by overpowering others, but by refusing to disappear. Your voice doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be present. The 5F key point is this uncomfortable lesson most people try to escape. Self-respect has a price, and that price is discomfort. Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet tension you feel when you stop pleasing and start choosing. The moment you decide to honor yourself, something inside tightens. Your heart races a little. Your mind searches for an exit. That discomfort is not a warning sign. It is a signal that you are stepping out of an old pattern that once kept you safe, but now keeps you small. Discomfort shows up when you say no for the first time and don't immediately explain yourself. It appears when you don't laugh at something that crosses a line. It sits with you when you don't respond right away just to keep the peace. And in those moments, your old habits will beg you to retreat. They will tell you it's easier to smooth things over, to adjust, to swallow it like you always do. But ease is not always growth. Sometimes ease is just familiarity dressed as comfort. Most people don't avoid self-respect because they don't want it. They avoid it because they fear what comes with it. The awkward pause, the changed tone, the possibility that someone might look at them differently. That fear is deeply human. We are wired to belong. But belonging that requires you to abandon yourself is not belonging. It is survival. And survival mode may keep you accepted, but it keeps you tense, alert, and always bracing for the next moment you'll have to bend again. Think of discomfort like stretching a muscle that hasn't been used in years. At first, it feels wrong. The body resists. It aches in places you forgot existed. But that stretch is not harming you, it's waking you up. In the same way, emotional discomfort stretches parts of you that have been locked away by politeness and fear. Each time you choose self-respect, you strengthen a muscle that allows you to stand straighter in your own life. The soreness fades, the strength remains. There is a strange peace hidden inside discomfort, not immediately, but slowly. At first, you replay the moment in your head. You wonder if you were too much, too cold, too direct. But then something settles. You notice you didn't betray yourself. You notice you can breathe a little deeper. That peace doesn't come from being liked, it comes from being aligned. And once you taste that kind of peace, the old comfort of self-abandonment starts to feel heavy and dull. Discomfort also acts like a filter. When you stop bending, some people step closer with respect, others step away with frustration. Both reactions are information. You don't need to chase either one, you simply observe. Self-respect reveals who was connected to you and who was connected to your compliance. That realization can sting, but it also clears space. Space for relationships that don't require you to perform. Space for conversations where you don't have to rehearse every word before you speak. It's important to understand that choosing discomfort doesn't mean choosing conflict. It means choosing honesty over avoidance. You can be calm and still firm. You can be kind and still say no. Discomfort doesn't always come from arguments. Often it comes from silence that finally has boundaries, from pauses that no longer rush to fill themselves, from answers that are simple and complete. And each time you allow that discomfort to exist without fixing it, you teach yourself that you are safe in your own truth. Over time, discomfort stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a guide. It tells you when you are growing instead of shrinking. It reminds you that self-respect is not loud confidence, but quiet consistency. The willingness to feel awkward today, so you don't feel resentful tomorrow. The courage to sit with tension now, so you don't carry bitterness later. This is how you reclaim yourself. Not in grand moments, but in small choices where discomfort knocks and you choose not to run. The sixth key point is this. Kindness without standards is not generosity. It is self-betrayal. When you give freely without thinking about the boundaries of your own heart, you create a map that others follow without permission. You think you are being loving. You think you are being good. But slowly, you are training people to take more than they give, to push farther than they should, and to rely on your softness as their default. Kindness without limits does not inspire respect. It invites overreach. It asks your soul to stretch thin and then wonders why you feel empty at the edges. When kindness lacks standards, it becomes invisible. People rarely notice what is freely available. They only notice what costs something. Think of a river that flows endlessly into the sea without forming banks or boundaries. It loses its shape. It spreads itself so thin that it no longer nourishes the land. It simply passes through it. Your kindness, without a backbone, does the same. It touches everyone superficially but never reaches deeply. The people you hope to help may take it for granted, and your own spirit silently shrinks, wondering if you matter at all. Boundaries are not walls, they are scaffolding for your heart. They give RM to your kindness and allow it to be strong, consistent, and meaningful. Without boundaries, you become a canvas that anyone can draw on, paint over, or tear apart. Your words lose weight, your presence loses authority, and your love, no matter how sincere, starts to feel hollow even to you. Kindness needs shape, otherwise it bends under pressure, erodes under expectation, and eventually breaks silently, leaving you to wonder how something so beautiful could feel so exhausting. Many people fear that setting standards will make them appear harsh or unloving. But what they fail to see is that unlimited availability is not loving either. It is a quiet form of self-erasure. You hope that by never saying no, never taking a stand, you will be valued. But people do not value what is endless. They only recognize what is finite. The truth is, your yes is only meaningful when it costs you something. Standards are the measure that makes generosity recognizable, respected, and powerful. They turn giving into a choice, not a compulsion. When you anchor your kindness with standards, you teach others how to meet you. You demonstrate that respect is not optional and that compassion does not mean exploitation. People begin to understand that your heart is soft but not weak, that it is open but not unlimited. And something remarkable happens. Relationships change. They become honest, they become reciprocal. They become spaces where your care is received consciously, not assumed. This is the rare kind of connection that sustains both you and the other person. Without standards, you carry a constant unseen weight. Every request, every favor, every expectation is absorbed without pause. Your empathy becomes a drain, your generosity a burden. You feel responsible for things that are not yours to fix, and slowly you stop noticing the cost. Your spirit becomes tired before the day begins, and the smallest inconvenience feels like an avalanche. Standards are not restrictions on your heart, they are the oxygen that allows it to keep beating fully, deeply, and intentionally. Anchored kindness transforms both giver and receiver. When you hold your line, you discover that your heart is not smaller but fuller. Your generosity becomes intentional, your love deliberate, your help meaningful. You give because you choose to, not because you were assumed to. People notice the difference. Your energy no longer leaks away quietly. Your compassion gains weight, and you learn a lesson that changes everything. Softness does not mean being taken. Strength does not mean cruelty. Boundaries and kindness together create a force that is rare, respected, and profoundly human. The seventh key point is this: you are not here to be liked, you are here to live right. From the moment you understand this, a quiet revolution begins inside you. For too long, many of us have measured our worth by approval, by smiles, by nods. We adjust our thoughts, our words, our very posture, hoping anyone will feel comfortable with who we are. But living for the approval of others is like trying to drink from a river that is constantly moving. You never quench your own thirst, and the water is never really yours. People will always have opinions about the way you speak, the way you act, and the way you set your boundaries. Some will smile politely, others will frown sharply, and many will quietly resent the changes they sense in you. If your aim is to be liked, you will shrink at the first disapproval. You will hold yourself back, dim your light, and whisper your voice into corners where no one will notice. And in doing so, you lose the only thing you can never replace: your authenticity. Likeness is fleeting. Living with integrity lasts. To live right is not to seek conflict or to provoke others. It is to honor your own compass. You let your inner compass guide you. You make choices aligned with who you truly are, not who someone else wants you to be. That means sometimes saying no, sometimes walking away, sometimes standing silently while others complain or question your actions. It is uncomfortable at first because it exposes you, and exposed people are vulnerable. But vulnerability here is strength. It is the kind that builds quiet, unwavering trust in yourself. Being liked feels safe because it creates predictability in human interactions. You know what others will think, what they will expect, how they will respond. But safety is not always the same as health. Safety can slowly erode your spirit if it comes at the cost of your integrity. Each compromise to be liked chips away at the self you promised to nurture. And over time, you start feeling hollow, like a tree bending too often in the wind, still standing, still green, but quietly losing its roots. Living right requires courage because it often means disappointing someone, even unknowingly. Some will expect you to conform, to soften, to avoid tension at any cost. And when you refuse, they may react with frustration, confusion, or even anger. That is not a reflection of your failure, it is a reflection of the expectation that you should shrink for their comfort. You are not failing when you assert your truth. You are rising to a level of existence where your presence has meaning because it is chosen, not tolerated. There is a deep freedom in accepting that you cannot be liked by everyone. The world is full of personalities, desires, and opinions that will never fully align with yours. To try to appease every one of them is to live on shifting sand, unstable, exhausting, ungrounded. But when you accept that your responsibility is not to be liked but to live rightly, your choices become lighter. You no longer bargain with your energy. You no longer dilute your decisions to make them palatable. Your actions gain gravity, and your voice gains resonance because it is authentic. When you live right, you attract the people who are meant to be in your life, not by coincidence, but by persona. NCE. Those who value integrity over convenience. Those who respect boundaries over compliance. Those who connect with the real you, not a version edited for approval. And in that space, life feels deeper, richer, and more honest. You stop performing for applause. You stop measuring worth by reflection. You simply exist with clarity, courage, and alignment, and the world in its way responds, not always with agreement, but always with truth. And now, as you sit with all of this, feel it settling into the quiet corners of your mind. Know this: being kind does not require surrendering yourself. Honoring your boundaries does not make you cold. Speaking your truth does not make you harsh. Saying no is not failure. It is a declaration that your life has shape, that your time has value, that your heart has limits worth respecting. Every choice you make from this place of clarity will feel lighter because it comes from alignment rather than fear, from understanding rather than habit. There will be moments when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels lonely. That is the nature of growth. But discomfort here is not a threat, it is a guidepost, a sign that you are stepping into the version of yourself that refuses to bend in ways that erode your spirit. You will notice it in the quiet spaces, in the decisions that don't need applause, in the peace that comes from knowing you are living honestly. Life does not always reward the loud or the easy. It rewards the steady, the intentional, the rooted dart. What you are learning now is not about controlling others, it is about reclaiming yourself, about living with clarity, about letting your yes mean something, about letting your no protect what is sacred. Your voice matters, your presence matters. And when you finally step into that balance, you will move through the world differently, not in anger, not in distance, but in calm, unwavering self-respect. People will respond in ways they must, but your life will no longer be dictated by their expectations. There is a quiet strength in realizing that being liked is not the measure of your worth. There is a profound freedom in knowing that living rightly, fully, honestly, and respectfully is the measure of your life. You will see that people who belong will naturally find you, not because you conform to their needs, but because you showed up as yourself. And those who do not belong will fall away without bitterness, because you no longer define yourself by the space they occupy. Carry this understanding with you, your kindness, your generosity, your patience. They are treasures when given from a place of clarity and intention. Your boundaries, your voice, your choices. They are not limitations, but the very scaffolding that allows your life to be real and unshakable. The world will continue as it always does, but your presence in it will be different. You will no longer scatter yourself to fit someone else's version of you. You will no longer exchange your peace for them. for reapproval. Step back into your life with that quiet awareness, knowing that each day offers the same chance to live aligned, to speak clearly, to act intentionally, to care deeply without giving away your essence. You have permission to protect your spirit, to honor your heart, and to move through the world with steady, grounded strength. And in that steadiness, you will discover a life that is not only more honest, but more enduring, more meaningful, and profoundly yours.